Okay, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. And now, quickly moving on to the next interesting topic. What we have in store for all of you at the Fireside chat is about the new age banking, the key imperatives. We are going to be having two eminent speakers. We're going to be having with us Mr. Vinayak Godse, the Senior VP from DSCI, and Mr. Amarnath Chowdary, the Managing Director and Group CEO from Modefin. So, over to both of you and a very warm welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Namita. Thank you, Mr. Amarnath, joining us today for this interesting fireside discussion, which would probably conclude the financial security conclave we set up this year. So everywhere we do this conclave to deliberate on a technology transformation that is shaping financial industry, and we try to see and understand the technology, business innovation, how the trends are going, and what kind of adoption that technology adoption that we see in the financial sector. And we know that financial sector, as of now, it doesn't only remain conventional regulated entity, but the entire supply chain of financial transaction processing is so unbundling. So a lot of new players are joining in doing those transactions basically. A lot of financial technology startups which are now helping the larger, bigger financial institutions to really initiate those transactions, even help them to enrich the transaction, help them to execute the transaction, and sometimes after the execution of transaction, also manage the data coming out of the transactions as well. And some of them are also helping them to manage security, helping them to manage the products as well basically. So while this is happening, we try to see the transformation happening, we try to see the adoptions happening, we try to see the way the businesses are moving around this one and the opportunities and innovations coming in this area, and we try to then investigate from the security privacy perspective. So there's no better leader than you to really conclude the financial security counter this year, because you had been enabling a lot of those innovations in various different financial institutions, not only in India but other parts of the globe as well. And you have a very strong presence in some of the other geographies, and we know because we have been working with your team on some of the research projects that we have been driving, and your team is very much research focused, innovation focused as well, which I had been seeing in last year, 7 8 months time of our interaction with them. So we can start with getting your perspectives on overall the innovation ecosystem in financial sector is going, and how do you see from your side as of now, and then probably we'll try to review the things that are going to happen in the coming future as well.
Sure. And thank you very much for inviting me to this wonderful session. And I must thank you for that wonderful introduction as well. We are not that big, but we're trying to be there as such. And from our experience, or what we could see is that today the banking sector or the financial sector are the crossroads of innovation and transformation. And no one can deny that fact. Okay. And I always tell to customers and everyone that innovation is not a one-time job; it's a constant thing. So innovation has to be a continuous and constant thing, and it has to be fueled and driven by the changes affecting the day-to-day life, or the requirements which are affecting our end customers, etc. So with respect to that, if I can relate the changes happening on the ground, etc., there are multiple challenges the banks are facing, and these challenges has to fuel the innovation. The first and foremost challenge the banks are facing is they are fighting for the same cake. No matter in which country we are talking, which market territories, the banks have a limited customer base, and every bank is fighting for the same piece of the cake. Number one. Number second, you see there is a new age fintech companies, who is coming for a specific purpose. For example, you see in India and outside India, there are a lot of fintech companies coming for a P2P lending, coming for some, customer onboarding, coming for some corporate loans, etc. For example, you see the 100th unicorn in India, which is open, right? So what they're doing, they're just creating a bank account for the SMEs and corporates, right? So back then, 5 years back, or let's say a few years back, that was only the bankers mandated to do that one. So today, if I need a corporate account, I don't need to go to the bank at all. So there is a threat facing business threat coming from these fintech companies as well. And third thing is that even the telco companies who has a larger distribution network and a larger presence than the banks, because of being a telco, and they are also coming into the financial services. We have seen Airtel coming into the Airtel Money business, and then get Airtel Money transforming into Airtel Payments Bank as well. Similarly, Paytm being transferred as a Paytm Payment Bank as well, etc. So there is a lot of competition coming from these new age players as well. So with all those things, the banks are posed for a transformation, and innovation has to happen. So now, if you ask me where the innovation parameters are there and what parameters are driving the innovation, I would say the first and foremost thing driving the innovation is the experience. See, today no one talks about bank being as a requirement; rather they talk it as a service. As long as I am getting a banking service, I am not bothered from which bank the service is being generated. So, so when my grandfather was there, he always used to go to SBA and ensure that the branch is there in that location physically. So that's the mindset of the older generation, saying that the money is safe, the branch, that is the mindset. But our generation, if you look at it, we are not bothered where the SBA branch is there or any other branch is. As long as in my mobile, in my internet, wherever, my services are getting delivered, I'm not worried about it. So there is a lot of emphasis coming onto the bankers ecosystem with respect to the experience they are creating, they wanted to create. That is the hook. That is the hook, I would say, which can retain the customers on the banking system. Number one. Number second, you see now, banks being traditionally servicing the financial needs, they're amassed a lot of data onto their platforms. But it is the time for them to unleash that potential. It is a hidden potential which they are trying to discover nowadays, and they have to unleash this potential. And they should unleash in this potential, try to discover what are the services Amar might need. So, and it has to preempt those requirements. It's not that I call my banker and say that I am looking for a loan, or I'm looking for a car loan, or an insurance product, or a travel insurance, or a forest car, nothing like that. So the data behind my system, or the data behind my relationship, has to drive and has to preempt those assumptions, has preempt those suggestions. And my relationship manager has to pull that and say that, okay, Amar, you are traveling tomorrow, so just here is your forex card, please take care of it.
Yeah.
Or you are, I saw you buying a car, let's say, so this is the vehicle insurance I'm prompting for you. See, today you see our lives are interviewed on many things, like people are more social, people are more mobile, people wanted to put a limited time onto their peripheral things, etc. So because everyone is busy in their own things, right? Everyone is a micro entrepreneur today. And you see that most of the people, the moment they buy anything, be it a car or forget about the white goods, any small thing, the update is on the social media, right?
Yeah.
So social media comes as a powerful tool for you to generate the leads, and also for you to understand and judge the requirement of the customer. So the data available with all those things, you should be able to analyze the data with the help of AI and ML, and try to provoke the information or the needs of the customer, and go back to the customer with a value centric proposition. I call it as value centric proposition. This is the another thing which is fueling onto the banking ecosystem. And the third one which is fueling onto the banking ecosystem, and again that is something to do with the security, I would say, is automation and other things, again powered by the AI and ML. You see, security is an ongoing concern. It is not a one-time concern, as you know it. So DSCI, be a better person. So you are the better people to judge those things. And you know it better. See, and most of the banks today, whether they disclose, they don't disclose, security is an ongoing concern and daily matter. And no matter how foolproof our systems are, we always remember one thing, that hackers are one step ahead of us. Today we ensure that our systems are foolproof, and we'll go to the bed, and tomorrow we'll realize that hackers found a way to maneuver that security protocols what we put into the place, which is very common, right? Because that is the bread and butter for hackers. So they have to continuously be an innovation for them as well. So
Yeah.
when these things are coming up, so bankers are required to pause, and required to continuously monitor the systems, and action the monitored insights, reporting, and closures. We call it as a march protocol. So
Yeah.
monitoring, action, closures, reporting, and handshaking. So bankers has to get into this march protocol. And you see, not all the time humans are required to monitor this thing. There is a kind of automation we can do it. For example, today we can put a automation into the place which can detect a fraud. And once the fraud has been detected, then you don't need a human to come and say that to just stop that requirement, or just stop that transaction for a moment until it's resolved. The automation can go to one step further and say that, okay, this transaction has to be stopped immediately because of these following rules. So those things are also coming up. So these are the another area where the innovation is happening into the banking sector. So This is what broadly I would say, apart
Yeah,
from
and
the
the story of a key driver for innovation is certainly the experience, right? But in many countries like India and even the countries that you serve in Africa as well, the inclusion is also key driver, right? So you would
yes.
like to take the services to the remote parts of the geographies basically, and get those people who are unbankable, not really connected to digital economy, make them a formal part of the economy is also one of the key driver, right?
Very true, very true. I'm sorry I could not touch base that point, but that is one of the key requirements. And
Yeah,
I'm very glad to notice that apart from India, many other countries has progressed very well on the financial inclusion and bringing the unbanked into the banking system.
yeah,
And
yeah,
thanks to the regulators also, who was kind of has relaxed the regulations and allowed the fintech companies and the ecosystem, I call it, as to play their own role in bringing them into the banking system.
yeah,
So that is also one of the key driver for inclusion. And on the same note, Mr. Vinayak, if you allow me to touch base,
yeah,
we should thank the regulators also, because nowadays regulators are allowing banks to onboard the customers digitally. So that is
yeah,
again part of the experience, but again part of the digital onboarding as well. So
yeah.
in India we have a sophisticated systems like e-Aadhaar and e-KYC, etc. So it's the job is much easier. But in other countries, underdeveloping countries or developing countries, you look at it as in Africa and other places, even if there is no centralized database, citizenship database, they are able to use the technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning and onboard the customers. So we
Yeah.
have deployed the technologies using the AI and ML
Yeah, and what
to
you're saying, like this architectural intervention that we brought together, right, with Aadhaar and and then the entire authentication and onboarding digitized, and especially after the COVID hit to us, then video KYC was also allowed basically. So onboarding, it was very tedious process. I remember the time used to take in terms of even opening a bank account basically, right? It used to be too much of a time in terms of opening a bank account, or a lot of verification process will go through that.
very true.
Second, onboarding, and second part is that even transaction processing as well. So we always talk about the experience, we discuss about inclusion, but one of the key thing which now most of the banks have been advertising is how you improve the productivity. So most of the banks have started now promising 5 minutes by loan process can happen basically.
Exactly. Exactly.
So yeah.
So
uh,
all these things are made possible because of this, sophistication, onboarding and
yeah.
sophisticated credit scoring mechanism they built into the systems, and also transaction monitoring, etc. See, today, as I said, banks are competing for the same cake, right? So unless you bring, you take care of the experience and bring down the sophistication into the systems, it's difficult to win the game.
And you talk about the important part of social media, but social media also taught us one lesson is not about only putting these products and services and application. It's also you need to bring people more and more to your platform and application and engage with them so that they will do more and more transaction basically, right? And
Very, very true. See, my take is this is what I learned in the market, and this is what I advocate to the bankers also. See,
yeah,
there are two things we can make out from social media, or let's say, sorry, there are two ways we can make out of social media. See, one way to make out of social media is your marketing and distribution channel.
yeah,
If you are a banker, social media is a marketing and distribution channel. So that is how we have to use it. The other way to use social media is it is your customer servicing tool to an extent, not 100%. To an extent, it's your customer servicing tool as well. Okay, so this is the two powerful things we can draw from social media.
yeah. And I would also like to add one more is you learn the main method of social media. So the way they notify you, way they keep you engaged, way they make
Exactly.
you spend more time on that, and that's the engagement piece that you need to learn. And that's why most of the banks have now started doing it,
Very
making
true.
very interesting application, and make that application engage with the customer. And at least in telecom, I'm seeing the one telecom application we used to only do the transaction with respect to the service I buy, but now same application is used to stream the movie to me. Same
Very
application
true.
used so many other things. So this engagement is something people are learning as well, and they're putting more and more of those possibility, and those creates new possibilities for them basically.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah,
And that is the good lesson also, I would say.
yeah,
Yes. And that is the way to go forward. See,
yeah,
the more you delight a customer, the
yeah,
chances of he staying with you and chances of he coming back is much better. So
yeah.
that's where it is.
So let's then dwell down in terms of technology that are enabling all of these things, right? Basically, so those technology stack, basically, you must be leveraging to provide these experiences, improving the productivity, or creating new possibility for the financial sector organization.
True. Sir, like any other vendor, what we do is that, so we being a banking technology company, so I would categorize our technology stack into two things. So one is that the complete, we call it as an open digital banking platform,
Yeah.
so it's a platform which can be used by any banker to onboard a customer digitally using in eKYC, or if there is no KYC tool in place, or using a AI and ML model, where you can even see the facial gestures and liveness check, etc., so that we know that a robot is not being onboarded but a real customer has been onboarded. Okay, so once you onboard a customer, this digital banking platform enables you to define his privileges in the system, then servicing them in terms of the retail services, corporate services, SME services, or a treasury, whatever you want to do, make use of it. And once you do that one, then continuously monitoring those services in terms of the sophisticated technologies like AI and ML, so that the data what is being generated on the transaction layer can be used to predict the analysis and predict the future of the requirements, etc., and so that they can go back to the same customer and service him in a much better way. So, and then returning, and again, so end of the life cycle, we call it as. So the open digital banking platform what we have can take care of the customer onboarding to the end of the life cycle as well. So using this platform, what happens is that banks can leverage these platforms to onboard, to retain, to train the customers, to market the customers, to service the customers on a seamless model. This is the one technology stack we call it as. Now the question is that once you onboard the customer, then what to do with the same customer and what to do with the data available with the same customer. Okay, that is where we come back with the second level of tech stack called as a monitoring and monetization tools. So this monitoring and monetization tools, it can work as an independent tool, or it can go with the platform altogether, depending on the bank choice. What it can do is that it can continuously keep monitoring the transaction happening on these platforms. See, in any typical bank, you have a core banking sitting at the center of the bank, then you have the peripheral systems like the delivery channels, other CRM systems or treasury systems, etc. So there is a lot of transactions happening on these peripheral systems. So what this monitoring and monetization tool will do is that it can keep monitoring the transaction happening on these channels as per the rules what we define. There are around 1,500 rules what you can define as a banker, which can touch base with various banking departments, be it a retail bank, corporate bank, SME bank, treasury, compliance, regulatory reporting, your security, IT operations, etc., etc. So based on the rules what you defined, it can keep monitoring these transactions, and it can give you two instant benefits to you. The first benefit what it can do is that it can monitor and prevent any fraud which can happen on a real-time basis. And it can also alert and see what can be done with the fraud, whether we have to quarantine this transaction, or we have to stop this transaction, we have to escalate this transaction, or what to do with this one. So that is the one benefit you get it. The second benefit we get it as, okay, once you monitor and once the transactions are going through successfully, and once you collected some data, and this system will start to understand that data and throw some intelligence to the business users. Okay, so that's why we call it the monetization of the data. So when we do this intelligence and monetization, what happens? Let's say Vinayak is been saving some funds, and the funds are in the current account, or let's say saving account. So it will digest the data and say that, Vinayak, instead of keeping this $100,000 in your saving account, why can't you put this in your some XYZ account, which can give you some 2% interest? I'm just giving an example. So similarly, when Amarnath applied for an auto loan, so this system can understand and can give a secondary products like, okay, if he's applied for auto loan, the next thing could be auto insurance. If he applied for auto insurance, then the next thing could be some, the life cover for the travel, or travel insurance, etc., etc., all those things. See, today what is happening in the absence of this monitoring and monetization systems, what is happening is that the relationship managers or the sales guys in the banking industry are under pressure to generate these kind of leads or businesses, so they have to call and ask them. It's a nuisance, I would say it is. Rather with this kind of a insightful information, so it's very easy saying that, Vinayak sir, you are spending this much money, so let me move it to this account, you get a 2% interest. So your time is saved and your objective is achieved.
I think I remember the paradigm where I used to work with the financial sector where we used to talk about the need to know basis information, right? But now it's like context based information delivery, right? If you don't deliver that context to the people, then most of the effort they put for them. And I had seen in many cases, mostly at the branch level, the way these everyday sales calls are happening at a branch level, sometimes it becomes so difficult for those sales people to
Very
really
true.
sustain those basically. And then what you are saying is a very targeted information that's being delivered to these people, so they can add, they themselves can improve their productivity, and more importantly, they can add a lot of value to the banking organization basically.
Exactly. Very true.
Yeah,
Very true.
yeah,
And
yeah,
sir, if I can take this to one step further, see, now one of the challenge bankers faces is that they tend to lose the customers on annual basis.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
customer will move away, whatever the reasons.
yeah.
See, there is no mechanism for a banker to identify why this customer is being lost. you know so unless you put some scientific approach towards those things, right? So with this continuous monitoring and monetization, you can also go, you can improve the algorithms in such a way that we can predict whether what are the likely chances of Amar continuing this banking relationship for next 3 months, or what is the chance of exiting this relationship. Okay. See, when we give such kind of a insightful information to you as a business owner, and you know that, oh, the chances of you leaving the relationship is very high, then you know what to be done to retain him. See, today you know the cost of acquiring a bank customer, right?
Yeah.
So instead of acquiring a new customer, instead of spending that money on acquiring a new customer, it's a double benefit for him to retain the existing customer,
Yeah.
right? So this is the benefit which a banker can derive on all these things, and that is the way to go. So
Yeah.
otherwise, as I said in my opening remarks also,
Another
the bankers are
important
fighting.
question, yeah, another
Sorry.
important area which I want to pick up here is, and there's one question somebody asked here, is this last mile delivery. And this last mile delivery is certainly because of the internet connectivity is going there, and probably 5G could definitely bring a lot of those benefits. But sometimes there will be instances where some transactions are still not digitized, and that's why I talked about offline way to digitize the offline authentication as well. So can you little bit, because there's a question somebody asked here, talk about the last mile delivery of financial services, and some of those transactions are still not really digitized, and what effort that you are putting together. I know in one of the effort we are working with you with one of the IT. So what effort that is being put together to digitize those last mile delivery of financial services?
Sure. So thank you for prompting that question, and that is very relevant in the Indian market scenario, and I would say in the subcontinent market scenario, and of course in the African other market scenario as well. See, because of the territory restrictions and the geography spread out, so we have a challenges where uh, see, we all know that both the terminals should be online to effective way to
Yeah,
have end-to-end digital transactions.
yeah,
So the scenarios are that be specific to India or outside India as well, where the maybe the guy who is delivering the last mile services will be online, but the customer will be offline. you know the chances are that customer can be online, but the guy who is delivering is offline. So both the chances are there. Or the third scenario could be both of them are offline. So these are the challenges. So we are as a R&D project, we've taken up with one of the IIT. I'm sure your organization is also getting involved in that one. And see, what we are doing is that we are facilitating for offline transactions. Okay, so as a first case study, we are doing offline transactions where the customer can be online. Sorry, the merchant will be online. The guy who is giving the service will be online, but the customer will be offline. So you see, in Indian scenario, this is very, very relevant because you know that two-thirds of the people are staying in a rural and the semi-rural areas where the 3G connectivity is not that very good. And even if the connectivity is there, you know that their mobile handset is not very smart. So
yeah,
that means the apps cannot run all those things, right? And you know that the because of the dialects and the language barriers, all those things, for them the USSD, all those services also may not make sense. So this is where this becomes very, very relevant. So even if the customer who want to avail this banking services is offline, they just assume that they have a very normal phone without any internet connection also. If they know their mobile number, they know their PIN number, with the help of the person who is coming to deliver the banking services to them, they can get the transactions done. That is the kind of a R&D we are doing it, and we are making use of the blockchain and other technologies, to facilitate the security portion over there. And there is a very good encryption built by
yeah.
IIT guys, to make sure it happens, all those things. So this is the first thing we are targeting to go live in next couple of months. And
Yeah.
once we go as a second phase, we are also working on what happens if both the guys are offline, the customer as well as the guy who is giving the service. If both of them offline, what happens? So that is where we are going on. So
Yeah.
that will, I mean, if we all say that UPI transactions are so many millions or billions, and if this offline mode is enabled, then I would say it will double, triple billions, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. So now I'm trying to bring the discussion of security and fraud and privacy here in the last 10 minutes of this discussion. So if these are being the transaction that will be processed, and there are n number of ways that you are finding to process the transaction. And as I talked about the entire chain, there are so many players now. I have just looked at how even somebody like Gmail and WhatsApp, that we never thought that they will be coming into financial transaction processing, basically, right? And
True.
sometimes the mobile phones biometric identity can also be used to provide access to the banking application, basically. So the transactions are huge, right? Volume and velocity of transactions that are increasing quite
True.
significantly. That too, this kind of complexity as well.
Sorry, sir, I
So,
lost you for a moment.
so I'm talking about the volume and velocity, and including this kind of diversity and complexity of transactions significantly rising, basically, right? If I have to uh, monitor, uh, hello, did we lose him? Vibor, can you check? Vibor or Jatin?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be having Amarnath join us in few minutes from now. And let me tell you that this is going to be the last session. And after this, we come to the end of the Day 2 FinSec 2022. So yes, we are going to be closing off in some time from now. But quickly, let's have the gentleman join us back.
Hello. Yeah, so Amarnath is joining in some time. So one of the key thing that we had been looking this entire transaction processing, and I was talking about this unbundling of transaction processing and the kind of players that are joining the transaction processing and the entire the cycle. And there are a lot of small things which is being taken care um, by different players, and the fintech players are there. Then there are the financial services company are there, the regulated entities, payment service providers, the cloud providers, then these social media and email companies. So the architecture in India had been made such a open, this architecture intervention in terms of the Aadhaar and especially with UPI, that so many different entities are now joining the transaction processing basically. So one of the key thing from to investigate from security and privacy, and more importantly from fraud perspective, is if the transactions are happening like way, the scale is increasing quite significantly, and that we are seeing the volume is rising to the extent of billions of transactions are happening per month uh, on UPI transaction. And with this kind of complexity diversity we talk about, so one of the key thing which would be important from the fraud management perspective is how do you observe the transaction for likely security, privacy, or fraud issues basically. So that was one of the key questions for investigation. And the challenge there is because if the things are transactions are happening processed in billions way, and there are multiple contexts driving individual transaction, no matter how much context that you try to build to understand the things that could go wrong basically, no matter how much configurability that you can put together for understanding the security, privacy, and fraud possibilities in a given transaction, you're still not able to find and get hold of that particular things that could probably potentially create a problem for security, privacy, or fraud basically, or probably fraud. So these are three things that basically we look at. So no matter how much you thought about, so this is a question that Amarnath sir, I wanted to ask you. With this volume, complexity, diversity, so many players joining, the scale of transaction and volume is quite significantly increasing. So no matter how much you think about security, privacy, or more importantly fraud, how many scenarios you think about, you're not able to really get hold of that thing that which could compromise security, privacy, or probably create instance of the fraud. So how do you observe? So you talked about monitoring. So you talked about monitoring for the business purpose. I'm talking about monitoring for a security and fraud and privacy management perspective. So how do you monitor all of these things so that you find issues and problem out of it?
Yeah, maybe what I can say, or what observations we have in the market, and also this is what we've been advocating with the bankers also, is that, see, if you combine the whole ecosystem and try to monitor with the security perspective, I am sure we can go wrong somewhere. Okay,
Yeah.
so rather what we suggest is that let's dissect this security into three or four areas. Okay, so let's do the security at the or the customer level. So customer means the end customer who is getting the service. Number one. And then the security at the user level. When you say security at the user level, means the employees of the bank or a financial institutions who is monitoring and administering the systems at various levels, so to ensure that these services are delivered. Then the third thing is that the security at the data or the transaction level. Okay. Then the fourth one is the security at the infrastructure level. Okay. So
Yeah.
if we can bifurcate the whole security complex matrix into three or four business areas, then what happens is that then our job becomes little easier. So then what happens is, with respect to, let's say, at the customer, then there are various tools available, and there is a various protocols what we can employ to ensure that how to make the security at the customer level is achieved, either by way of awareness or by way of enforcing the policies, etc. So similarly, we can employ the different mechanism, different policies, or the tools to protect the security at the user level, and the so on and so forth for the transaction and data level under the infrastructure level as well. So unless we bifurcate into that area and we employ different techniques and different policies, it is very difficult to monitor at the end-to-end system.
Yeah, and this is about security, but there's one question on ethics, right? So the way the data is being delivered and data being collected and processed, and all these AI engines have been built basically. So how do you see some ethical moral questioning happens, and those ethic moral and privacy are the key thing basically we task us, so that the result that the algorithm throws are unbiased and wouldn't create those kind of discrimination in terms of the way the services provided to customers.
Uh, my plain answer is whatever said and done, so that is something people has to practice, right?
Yeah,
See, we can create a sophisticated algorithm to ensure that this data will not spill into the wrong hands.
yeah,
But as an administrator, if I am monitoring, my intentions are not very right, I can definitely find a way to break into that and get that one. So
yeah,
it is very difficult, I would say, unless the one who is monitoring at the user level has that kind of restrictions. So that is where I said, for the user level, to protect that privacy, to ensure that ethical practices is followed, all those things, we have to build a mechanism or a policies in such a way that there is a less room for a error, or there is a less room for such a practices. For example, one simple example I will give you. I mean, this is again an initiative taken by RBI in India as well. See, today, until recently, you are not forcefully asked to go on leave by any banker.
yeah,
Okay. But today, the RBI rule says that, let's say, if you are in a loan approving department, or if you're in a loan approving committee, and if you are standing in that committee, let's say, for continuously some X number of days or months, then there is a mandatory cooling period for you.
yeah,
So the RBI bought such kind of a small step. It's not a very great innovation, I would say. It's very small step.
yeah,
Is
yeah,
is is because there is a little, by replacing the people, by putting the more people. So you are eliminating the chances for such practices.
yeah. But now the question probably would come that you can still do this at a human intervention level. This is one of the key control that most of the banking organization may not be in India, but other parts of the globe have been following this. But now, if algorithms are taking decisions, so we probably need to make algorithm also unbiased, basically. So sometimes algorithm also needs to be subjected to such kind of audit and such kind of assessment. They are not throwing results which are creating discrimination, or probably not allowing somebody services which they should have been allowing, basically.
Yes, which is I'm sorry, I'm not able to recollect that study. I want to quote a study name
Yeah,
in here,
yeah,
because that is precisely the point what you are referring also. See, down the line you may see some kind of a like today we call it a forensic audit, right? So let's say forensic audit came because of the so many digital transactions happening, data being stored electronically. So that's the forensic audit came into the picture. So down the line, similarly, for AI and ML kind of activities, some new kind of audit might come into the picture with some own things in place or practices in place. And regulators will play a greater role in controlling those things, and in defining what kind of checks and balances has to be taken care in those areas. And there was a very good study which came by one of the university as well. So unfortunately, I'm not able to recollect that study here.
yeah. So we always talk about security, especially privacy, um, as a something to be taken care of. Something to be taken care of. So, but sometimes security also enables some new possibility, right? So, for example, this case study that you talk about, the offline authentication, right? It is only possible because the cryptography would be helping you to do that transaction, basically, right?
Right.
So, I mean, I'm happy to see that sometimes some security capabilities now aiding to the innovation as well, right? So, so can you just comment on this? How security is really helping you to digitize more or innovate more, actually?
Sure. So I always quote one jargon, that every challenge brings an opportunity.
Yeah,
Okay. So the security, if you look at it as a challenge, it also brings an opportunity, and which is what we are talking about. So offline transaction security in a challenge, right? So if you turn that challenge, what opportunity can bring? If you use that cryptography and digital enablement and blockchain, all those things, and set a proper limits, for let's say a limit of 500 per transaction, 1,000 per transaction, etc., etc. It's a enormous opportunity which can open the unbanked people to come onto the banking system and do the transactions. So we have to look in that direction only. So challenges are there, but every challenge will bring an opportunity also. So it's we have to decide whether shall we stick at the challenge and let go the challenge, or shall we look at underlying opportunity which can which can unlock this challenge. So we looked at that underlying opportunity, what can unlock the challenge, and that's where we commenced the innovation on the offline transactions, and we're trying to take that into the market as well. So that is the way to go. And I must thank to the universities who are helping us in that offline transaction research and cryptography, all those things. It's because of the a collaboration. This is again a successful case study for a collaboration between a academia and to the business. So where both the people can collaborate and launch the products as well. So, and we are really looking forward for such collaborations in the future as well.
So now to just conclude, because we probably cover quite a good ground here. To conclude now, what is going to happen in coming 2-3 years of time, right? And we know there is certainly a paradigm of digitization that we have seen, and now we had one discussion on the how the entire financial ecosystem in DeFi is now, although because of the crypto crash, definitely it had been going to a little bit challenges, but probably technologically it will definitely emerge out of it. So one is that, other is the meta, which, because you talk about experience, and metaverse is a great innovation in the meta basically, which is going to happen basically. The data which is coming in now, I did one interaction today morning on the quantum computing, and somebody is working with some of the banking organization to take this entire data processing or transaction processing to entirely different level. So it's a multiple increase in a way the transaction that you can process in a seconds basically, right? So these all capabilities are coming in, which will be determining the paradigm coming in the coming future. So how you as a the key technology provider have been preparing yourself? One is to leverage that, thrive on that, and other is also try to find issues and problems that could come from security, privacy perspective.
Yeah, we always at Modefin, we always believe change is a constant thing, and with the times we have to adapt to the change, and we have to move and adapt to new changes coming in. So these experiences and meta and quantum computing and so the let's say the ecosystem banking, people call it as, all those things are a new parlays into the into the business, and we have to adapt to accommodate those requirements, and we have to embrace also to adopt those changes. So that is where so today we call it as our, we call it as our product itself as a open digital banking. If you look
Yeah.
at it, why we call open, there is a reason behind we calling it as open digital banking, is because see, we don't want it to be a typical licensing technology provider to say that it is a restricted usage and license, all those things. Rather, it has to be so open that as a banker you can do any innovation on this product. And tomorrow, let's say, we kept this platform very open, so that any changes happening onto the delivery, like accommodating into the metaverse, or experiencing the new things onto this platform, all those things are easily accommodated on this, and you don't need to reinvent the wheel again. So that is the reason we calling it as open as well, number one. And number second, so we are already constantly in touch with the upcoming changes with the help of a collaboration between the academia and the business. So because you see, these new innovations, new things come from the academic levels first, right? So that's where we are in constant touch with the research institutions, organizations, people, to see how do we collaborate, what is coming in the future, and how do we ensure that our technology is transition readily onto this platform as well. So that is the
Yeah.
reason we have these collaborations into the picture. And because of that, we see ourselves as one step ahead of the competition and one step ahead of the other products available in the market. And the third
Okay.
thing, what you asked is, how do we keep, ourselves with the privacy, security issues, all those things, right? And I would say partially it's a experience, and partially it's into learning. So experience, we discussed so many protocols or the policies or the mechanisms available already into the market to protect the security at the individual, whatever the levels. At the same time, it's also learning for us, because as I said, the security is a constant thing and is a everyday evolving thing, right? So today we thought that we are secure and we go to bed, but again, day after tomorrow, something new comes into the picture. Then I'll be calling you, sir. There is some new challenge. What can we do here?
Yeah.
So it's a continuous learning thing as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
where again we try to work with prestigious organizations like DSCI, IITs, and and individual research scholars as well to see what else, what protocols you can build into the system. I mean, today people are talking about, apart from the, see, it started about OTP, then two-factor authentication, then multi-factor authentication. I'm just giving a small example. So
Yeah. Yeah.
apart from multi-factor authentication, today they talk about the tokenization, and apart from tokenization, they talk it about the device-specific tokenizations where the serial numbers are encrypted and locked, etc.
Yeah.
So it's a evolving thing as well. So
Yeah.
as and when the new things comes into the market, so we become a students and we try to adopt those things and bring it
Yeah,
in the
and then
system.
the cycle is removing, right? So
It is
we
going.
come with two-factor, multi-factor, and now we again talking about passwordless authentication as well now. So,
Exactly.
but thank you really very much. In a short notice, you really came and on this platform and really help us to really cover the significant ground. And in a way, there is no better way of concluding by talking to you, basically. So, thanks for really putting this thing together. Thanks for talking to us about innovation that are driving and also trying to reflect on the challenges that you have been facing, and also underline the need of partnership that is required with academia, with institutions like the Security Council of India, with government and individual researcher, and how you can amalgate all of those innovations coming in and also work with each other to solve these problems. At the same time, make yourself ready to enhance the experiences, improve the productivity, and probably create new possibilities for the people on the other hand, and other hand, the organizations in financial sector as well. Thank you, sir, for coming in. Thanks, Modefin team as well to make it happen.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And once again, thank you for collaborations what we are having. And we are looking forward for a greater collaboration. Thank you all.
Thank
Good
you.
evening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cheers.